I've just come across a link on the group that I subscribe to, the British Muslims for Secular Democracy on Facebook. Someone put an interesting link quoting Richard Dawkins, a famous agnostic writer. He calls himself agnostic, but in many occasions he comes across as more as atheistic to me. But anyway, he was comparing religious parents who share their religion with their children. He was comparing that to child abuse. And I'd like to just weigh in a little bit on my thoughts with this one. Firstly, I would like him to define exactly what forcing religion means. Because it seems to me that some hardline atheists will define any mention of God whatsoever, as forcing religion onto someone else. So first of all, I think it's important that he clarify exactly what he means. Certainly in this report, he didn't seem to go into too many details about what exactly he's getting at. But maybe he has, I don't know, maybe he has evaluate the issue in a deeper way. But this is true of a lot of atheists. They talk about forcing religion being forced onto others. Now, there's no doubt about it, there are religious people out there who are pretty obnoxious, and they do tend to impose their views on others. That is true. But I think this is another example of something that's being greatly exaggerated and a word being misused in the context. I'll give you a quick background about myself. I'm from a Christian family. Both my parents are Christians. My father has been a clergyman. My mother's a devout Christian. Now, I'm a free-thinking 28-year-old man. I'm, broadly speaking, a spiritual agnostic, broadly speaking. As far as I know, my brother and sister aren't practicing Christians, and they can speak for themselves, but they're not practicing Christians. Now, my brother may be, and I don't know, but they can speak for themselves. They're also adults. The point is, I know for a fact I was not abused because my parents happened to share their values and their views about Christianity when we were children. Now, I've got a Hebrew name, Nathan, as in Nathan the Prophet. My middle name's Samuel. That's partly from my grandfather, but also, obviously, Samuel was a king. But I never ever recall anything being forced on me. I was obliged to go to church as a child, but I don't see that as a major issue. I mean, the point here is that children really aren't at a stage in their life where they have life experience to make comprehensive choices on this. Now, it seems to me entirely reasonable that any loving parents would pass down values that they believe are good values to the children. If I was a parent, I would do the same thing. Not necessarily religion, but I would pass down other values. If I had sons, I would teach them to respect women and that sort of thing. If I had, the point I'm making is it's normal for parents to pass down values if they feel it's been worthwhile. But Mr. Dawkins seems to think this is a case of, the children are being brainwashed and forced into believing Christianity. Now, this is a distortion. Most Christian parents that I know, and I do know quite a few, don't behave like that. And I don't know as many Muslim parents, but I suspect the same is true. It's not fair to generalise and say that they're all fundamentalists. Now, it's true you'll have examples whereby, for example, you have some Muslim parents who get their kids to recite the Quran inside out, and there's these sort of workaholic recitation exercises, especially in some other parts of the world like Pakistan and so on. But to me that seems ego-driven. It seems a little bit like some Asian dragon parents who get their kids, especially in countries like South Korea and China, where they get their kids to be piano prodigies or something like that, which can be seen as abusive if it's excessive. And certainly that's a well-documented phenomenon. But again, that does not represent every single Asian parent. The same is true of religious parents. It's not fair to say that because some might do that, that's the approach that all religious parents take. And it seems to me that all you have to do is mention God, and atheists go into a tizzy fit. They get into this hysterical reaction of, oh, you're imposing it. Religious people have as much right to mention God as you to say that it's a lot of rubbish. There does seem to be a lot of double standards in atheist thinking. I'm talking about hardline atheist thinking. I'm not talking about atheists who say, oh, I don't believe in God, that's my view, but I don't have a problem with religious people getting on with it. I'm talking about the hardline atheists who constantly get into this thing about, oh, well, all religious people are imposing their religion. And this is a big problem I have with the attitude of people like Mr. Dawkins. Very rarely do they bother trying to differentiate between fundamentalists and the mainstream religious practitioners. Or if they do it in small writing. They really don't emphasize that basic fact. And that's actually quite dangerous, because it leads to a stereotyping of an entire group of people. So those who endorse Dawkins I think they really believe that all Christian parents, or all Muslim parents, or all Jewish parents, or all Hindu parents are nutters who force their children to carry around the Bible or the Quran and do their bidding. That's simply not the case. Yes, it may be true with some cases, but you can't use it to represent everyone. Now, some people say, oh, well, it should be a case whereby this thread, by the way, had a pretty good response. A lot of people were commenting on it, very mixed responses. Because that group, I should say, it's not just Muslims who go there, a lot of people come onto it. But one thing people were saying was, oh, well, children shouldn't have any influence on when they're adults, they just make their own choice. But surely it's equally damaging if the parents are hardline atheists and they're telling the children it's all a lot of rubbish, don't believe that. Surely that is imposing something as well. In a world where millions and millions of people do adhere to religious faith, to say to children, oh, it's all rubbish, that is an opinion being passed down. So really, what is the difference? Now, I know atheists will turn around and say, this is scientific fact. Maybe it is, but the point is, it's still a view that's being passed down. I mean, the thing about science is it does alter all the time, and even Dawkins has admitted he cannot say for an absolute fact that God doesn't exist. He has said that. And no atheist can categorically prove that God doesn't exist. They just say there's a high probability it doesn't exist. So surely then the logic should apply. It's the same principle. Now, I have no problem with atheist parents saying to their children, religious people believe in something, I don't think that exists. But surely they should apply the same standards then. If they believe that children are the sovereign of their own mind, which they seem to be insinuating, then surely they should not be influencing them either. If that's the case, then okay, let's just not talk about religion or atheism to children. But it seems to me it's entirely natural for parents to share their values. Now, like I say, this can be excessive. If the children are constantly, for example, I think Quran recitations can be excessive and potentially damage the child's thinking process. So when they become an adult, they can be maybe conservative Muslims. But to say that applies to everyone is just wrong. So when Dawkins comes out with, Dawkins strikes me as quite a deceptive character, because when he speaks, he comes across as, he's soft-spoken, he rarely loses his temper, he's quite soft-spoken, he comes across as reasonable, but some of the statements he makes are actually quite inflammatory. And I'm not talking about because they're politically incorrect, I'm talking about because they're just, for a man of his intelligence, they're actually just quite reckless and lazy. Quite honestly, they're lazy comments. So when he says something like, oh, teaching children about religion is child abuse, or, oh, there's never been Muslim Nobel laureates, for a man of his intelligence, and I do think he's a very clever man, that's just lazy and reckless sort of statements. So, okay, I should concede that there may be an element of, I know the media often only takes part of a quotation, so on. So maybe I'm doing Mr. Dawkins a disservice by going on the headline alone, but he is well documented for being vociferously anti-religion. So that's just my thoughts on this. I don't think there should be any restrictions on parents sharing their values with children in a moderate manner. Now, if they're saying something that, for example, clearly is a violation of human rights values, i.e. if they're encouraging their children to hate homosexuals, something like that, sure, I can see a problem with that. If they're encouraging their sons to see women as inferior, that's a problem. But there's no evidence whatsoever that this is a widespread situation. It may be true in some families, but that is not. I think it's just damaging, these sort of lazy generalizations about religious people. I mean, really, can you say a 5-year-old child, are atheist parents going to say, oh, you go out there and you become reading scientists, you become a great critique, you make great critiques of religion? I mean, what they're actually saying is that they're actually denying the childhood as well, because they're saying that children should be hostile to religion. They're saying that actually the child should be at a level where it should openly question religion. Now that surely is just as... I just think what I'm getting at here is that, provided it's to a moderate extent, which I don't include Quran recitations, I think that's excessive, but moderate influence from loving parents is really not a bad thing. Because under the logic that they're taking, I'm from a Christian family, like I said, surely under that logic I'd be having terrible flashbacks about how awful it all was, or I'd be a Bible-thumping fundamentalist. I'm neither. I'm a free-thinking adult, I don't follow organised religion, and there's many areas I can critique Christianity on, but the point is, I really don't feel I was ever forced to do anything. So I just think atheists like to throw around this word, religious people forcing their religion. I really wish they would define that exactly, because it seems to be something they throw around just to get some sort of moral high ground, and really it's a distortion.